until both channels are being streamed to. We are a go. Hello, welcome to the 104th episode of the Henry George Daily Devotion. We've made it to Chapter 2, Differences in Civilization to What Do, of Book 10. Book 10 is The Law of Human Progress, and this book is called Progress and Poverty, an inquiry into the cause of industrial depression and the increase of want. Dang. Can't even remember the name of this book, and I talk about it every day. An inquiry into the cause of industrial depressions and the persistence of poverty amid advancing wealth. Um, the remedy. The remedy. The remedy. All right. George writes, in attempting to discover the law of human progress, the first step must be to determine the essential nature of these differences, which we describe as differences in civilization. Okay? Don't know why it must be the first step, but George writes that the current philosophy which attributes social progress to changes wrought in the nature of man does not accord with historical facts we have already seen. Yes, we just went through whether or not the different, if there's some innate capacity uh, for different races, quote unquote, of man, and then the other idea was some sort of hereditary natural selection mechanism. Now we say that George says this does not accord with historical facts. We may also see, if we consider them, that the differences between communities in different stages of civilization cannot be ascribed to innate differences in the individuals who compose these communities. Okay. That there are natural differences is true, and that there is such a thing as hereditary transmission of peculiarities is undoubtedly true, but the great differences between men in different states of society cannot be explained in this way. The influence of heredity, which it is now the fashion to rate so highly, is as nothing compared with the influences which mold the man after he comes into the world. What is more ingrained in habit than language, which becomes not merely an automatic trick of the muscles, but the medium of thought? What persists longer or will quicker show nationality? Yet we are not born with a predisposition to any language. Our mother tongue is our mother tongue only because we learned it in infancy. Although his ancestors have thought and spoken in one language for countless generations, a child who hears from the first nothing else will learn with equal facility any other tongue, and so of other national, or class peculiarities. They seem to be matters of education and habit, not of transmission. Cases of white children captured by Indians in infancy and brought up in the wigwam show this. They become thorough Indians, and so, I believe, with children brought up by gypsies. That this is not so true of the children of Indians or other distinctly marked races brought up by whites is, I think, due to the fact that they are never treated precisely as white children. A gentleman who had taught a colored school once told me that he thought the colored children up to the age of 10 or 12 were really brighter and learned more readily than white children, but after that age they seemed to get dull and careless. He thought this proof of innate race inferiority, and so did I at the time. But I afterward heard a highly intelligent Negro gentleman, Bishop Hillary, incidentally make a remark which to my mind seems a sufficient explanation. He said, our children, when they are young, are fully as bright as white children and learn as readily. But as soon as they get old enough to appreciate their status, to realize that they are looked upon as belonging to an inferior race, and can never hope to be anything more than the cooks, waiters, or something of that sort, they lose their ambition and cease to keep up. And to this he might have added, that being the children of poor, uncultivated, and unambitious parents, home influences told against them. For I believe it is a matter of common observation that in the primary part of education the children of ignorant parents are quite as receptive as the children of intelligent parents. But by and by the latter, as a general rule, pull ahead and make the most intelligent men and women. The reason is plain. As to the first simple things which they learn only at school, they are on par. But as their studies become more complex, the children who at home is accustomed to good English, hears intelligent conversation, has access to books, can get questions answered, etc., has an advantage which tells. The same thing may be seen later in life. Take a man who has raised himself from the ranks of common labor, and just as he is brought into contact with men of culture and men of affairs, will he become more intelligent and polished. Take two brothers, the sons of poor parents, brought up in the same home and in the same way. One is put to a rude trade and never gets beyond the necessity of making a living by hard daily labor, and the other, commencing as an errand boy, gets a start in another direction and becomes finally a successful lawyer, merchant, or politician. At 40, a successful politician, huh? At 40 or 50, the contrast between them will be striking, and the unreflecting will credit it to the greater natural ability which has enabled the one to push himself ahead. But just as striking a difference in manners and intelligence will be manifested between two sisters, one of whom, married to a man who has remained poor, has her life fretted with petty cares and devoid of opportunities, and the other of whom has married a man whose subsequent position brings her into cultured society and opens to her opportunities which refine taste and expand intelligence. And so deteriorations may be seen. That evil communications corrupt good manners is but an expression of the general law that human character is profoundly modified by its conditions and surroundings. I remember once seeing in a Brazilian seaport a Negro man dressed in what was an evident attempt at the height of fashion, but without shoes and stockings. Yeah, George ran off to sea in his youth for a few years. One of the sailors with whom I was in company, and who had made some runs in the slave trade, had a theory that a Negro was not a man but a sort of monkey, and pointed to this as evidence in proof, contending that it was not natural for a Negro to wear shoes, and that in his wild state he would wear no clothes at all. I afterward learned that it was not considered the thing, quote unquote, there for the slaves to wear shoes. Just as in England it is not considered the thing for a faultlessly attired butler to wear jewelry. Though for that matter I have seen white men at liberty to dress as they pleased get themselves up as incongruously as the Brazilian slave. But a great many of the facts adduced as showing hereditary transmission have really no more bearing than this of our forecastle Darwinian. What's funny is that Henry George himself is reputedly sloppy in dress at times. He goes on. That, for instance, a large number of criminals and recipients of public relief in New York have been shown to have descended from a pauper 3 or 4 generations back is extensively cited as showing hereditary transmission. But it shows nothing of the kind. Inasmuch as an adequate explanation of the facts is nearer, paupers will raise paupers, even if the children be not their own, just as familiar contact with criminals will make criminals of the children of virtuous parents. To learn to rely on charity is necessarily to lose the self-respect and independence necessary for self-reliance when the struggle is hard. So true is this, that, as is well known, charity has the effect of increasing the demand for charity, and it is an open question whether public relief and private alms do not in this way do far more harm than good. And so of the disposition of children to show the same feelings, tastes, prejudices, or talents as their parents. They imbibe these dispositions just as they imbibe from their habitual associates, and the exceptions prove the rule, as dislikes or revulsions may be excited. Um, I am somewhat sympathetic to this whole argument, but I'm also not, this argument I don't find as very necessary to the rest of Georgism. Because like let's just suppose he's completely wrong about this, and it is purely hereditary. Um, the smart people have smart kids who will become smart or whatever. I mean, I guess he's talking a lot about manners and abilities. I mean, I am on George's side. But let's say he's completely wrong. And whatever happens that, whatever you do with a rich kid's kid, he's going to be successful. And whatever you do with a poor kid's kid, even if he's raised by rich people, he's going to be poor. Let's just suppose that. Does that mean that the wealthy and successful people should get to own all of the land and the poor person should only get a subsistence wage? No, that's not justice. Justice should be you get what you work for. So in that sense, like the nature nurture argument is just not that critical to me because whatever the explanation is for the development of a human, you're still going to end up with a distribution of adult humans, and there's always going to be the more competent and the less competent, no matter how that resulted. And so the question then is a system with the competent people who are able to dominate the economical exchanges of the time, and should they be able to buy all of the land or acquire all of the land and then lord that over the others? And that should never be allowed. George continues. Like, yeah, like sometimes I just think about sports where it seems pretty clear in sports than in other domains that heredity has a huge effect on that. Um, like if sports success were to determine, everyone's welfare in society, well-being, like just because, Michael Jordan, was the best ever. Of course, I don't even know about his son or daughter. Did Michael Jordan have kids? Yeah, I guess he's had kids. I don't know how good they got at basketball, but they look like they played it in some level. LeBron has a son. Anyway, um, do I think like if our ability in basketball determined how much wealth each person got, do I think that Michael Jordan should have as much wealth as Bill Gates? No, no. And it's clear to me that Michael Jordan was more superior in basketball than whatever Bill Gates was as a programmer, I believe. Anyway. All right. Yeah. That's correct. Trinity Rodman. She was a heroine for us. We won the World Cup. I mean the Olympics gold, baby. Um, I always have to bring up the fact that Alex Morgan played for my club team. I played against her as a kid once, I'm told. I don't know, we scrimmaged the girls team once, and she was She was you know, the starting forward for the U.S. women's team for many years. Not related to Georgism at all. All right, where were we? Yes. The idea that public relief and private alms do not in this way do far more harm than good, because charity has the effect of increasing demand for charity. I think this is very relevant in our current welfare state, probably even more relevant in the European welfare state. Um, and it is, the welfare state is this kind of cover up of how unfair our economic systems are. It's almost like straight out of Brave New World. The fact that, you know, we deny laborers their fair reward, and instead we're just going to be like, well, whoever is at the bottom, at least we're going to patch him up a little bit. Anyway, all right. And so of the disposition of children to show the same feelings, tastes, prejudices, or talents as their parents. They imbibe these dispositions just as they imbibe from their habitual associates. And the exceptions prove the rule, as dislikes or revulsions may be excited. I'm not sure about that sentence. And there is, I think, a subtler influence which often accounts for what are looked upon as atavisms of character, the same influence that makes the boy who reads dime novels want to be a pirate. What are these, like saying? The tendency of reversion, a biological phenomenon that occurs when a genetic trait from an ancestor reappears instead of being lost through. Oh, yes, the re. I once knew a gentleman in whose veins ran the blood of Indian chiefs. He used to tell me traditions learned from his grandfather, which illustrated what is difficult for a white man to comprehend, the Indian habit of thought, the intense but patient bloodthirst of the trail, and the fortitude of the stake. Ho, ho, ho. From the way in which he dwelt on these, I have no doubt that under certain circumstances, highly educated, civilized man that he was, he would have shown traits which would have been looked on as due to his Indian blood, but which in reality would have been sufficiently explained by the broodings of his imagination upon the deeds of his ancestors. Wordsworth, in his song at the feast of Brougham Castle, has in highly poetical form alluded to this influence. Oh yeah, when I first read this, no, when I read this the second time for the Henry George book club, the Progress Poverty book club in Georgism Discord, I went up and I looked up this poem and read it. But it's quite long. And I like this just bullet point breakdown of these are the things that were very powerful in a poem. Armor rustling in the, like, how can, this just dries it out. Bullet pointing a poem. There's something pretty funny about that. On the blood of Clifford calls, "Quell the Scot!" exclaims the lance, "Bear me to the heart of France," is the longing of the shield. Alright, post in the comments if you want me to read the whole poem next time. In any large community, we may see, as between different classes and groups, differences of the same kind as those which exist between communities which we speak of as differing in civilization. Differences of knowledge, belief, customs, tastes, and speech, which in their extremes show among people of the same race, living in the same country, differences almost as great as those between civilized and savage communities. We're all just so different. How long is this? Too long to finish today. Whoa. Yeah, I remember these chapter 10 chapters being long. As all stages of social development from the Stone Age up are yet to be found in contemporaneously existing communities, so in the same country and in the same city are to be found, side by side, groups which show similar diversities. In such countries as England and Germany, children of the same race, born and reared in the same place, will grow up speaking the language differently, holding different beliefs, following different customs, and showing different tastes, and even in such a country as the United States, differences of the same kind, though not of the same degree, may be seen between different circles or groups. I wonder if George understood Gaussian distributions. Eh, I wonder, yeah, when was Gauss? Um, I mean, it's 100 years earlier. Oh, when he was born, yeah. Um, I mean, George was not formally educated very high, so I would be sort of surprised if he had done anything like um, calculus or probabilities. I don't know when. I don't know. I don't. When did I learn about Gaussian distributions? I don't know. Probably in physics in college. But I suppose if you were to take I mean, in his age, political economy was more like in the domain of philosophy, not really the sciences or math. Um, so yeah, interesting. Uh, but these differences are certainly not innate. No baby is born a Methodist or Catholic to drop its H's or to sound them. All these differences which distinguish different groups or circles are derived from association in these circles. The Janissaries were made up of youths torn from Christian parents at an early age, but they were nonetheless fanatical Muslims, and nonetheless exhibited all the Turkish traits. The Jesuits and other orders show distinct character, but it is certainly not perpetuated by hereditary transmissions, and even such associations as schools or regiments, where the components remain but a short time and are constantly changing, exhibit general characteristics which are the result of mental impressions perpetuated by association. This rings true to me from my own life experience in some of the extremist homeschool groups I was a member of, that we didn't join till I was like in fifth or sixth grade-ish, but nonetheless had very strong influence over me. And we very easily just could have gone a different direction. You can, yeah. Yeah, I can remember being like seventh, eighth grade and like feeling so, um, not exactly two-faced, uh, but around some groups, like I would spike my hair to be cool, and I wanted to wear, Airwalks or Vans. And then around this other group, you tuck your shirt in and you wanted to be esteemed for being polite and holding the door open for people. Anyway, I think we might end today's devotional with that. Think about the ways in which we are influenced by our associations with different groups. And make sure you hang out with lots of Georgists. That's what's most important. Alright, ending the recording. Alright, this was chapter 2 start. So we ended. To what do? Um, Nerd George says, mm, heredity, hereditary considerations are dwarfed by uh, environmental effects. Hereditary. It's funny. Hereditary. It's very similar. You almost have herd and you almost have heir. Interesting. Um, what? Nurture dominates nature? Um, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. I guess there's this, I've seen it a few, I saw this like Twitch thread. I wonder if I could find it. Hmm. Not Twitch. That's Twitter thread. Oh yeah, these were like all those similar songs. Hmm. I guess I don't have it saved. This is the other account. One oh four. Book 10, Chapter 2. Start. I think we should start renaming these to like Part 1. I don't think it matters too much though. An inquiry into the cause of industrial pressure increase of want with the increase of wealth. Anyway, the article or the Twitter thread I was looking for claims that like the Cultural Revolution in China and also when the samurai were sort of targeted and imprisoned and had their wealth taken from them. In both those instances, within a few generations, the offspring of those elites like were able to just become members of the elite or the elite again. And so it was sort of making the argument that genetics really had a large determination within those societies of who became elite. Now there's, you know, some responses you can make to that. I don't know. It could be sort of unique to those cultures in 100 different ways. It could be unique to them. I definitely think our society in the US, as best as I can tell, for a really long time has just really over rewarded like high IQ people, you know, the lawyers effectively. Like the lawyers, there came to be at like, you know, at some point it just became a lawyer's world. And then slash, you know, landowners. I don't know. Okay, we have published this, published that. All right.